Good morning, everybody, and thank you for making it to our inaugural Women in TGI webinar. It's Friday, and I'm sure that everybody's winding down for the week now. So thank you again for making our time to join us. For our guests from TGI, thank you, and for those outside of TGI, thank you as well. So without wasting much of our time, I'll bring on Onome. She's HR Director for Non-Agric. She'll be taking us through the overview to just explain to us what exactly we're all doing here, and then we'll proceed from there. Thank you.
Rafia, thank you, dear. So good morning, everyone. And on behalf of our family here,
we've lost you.
Welcome to our panelists, our viewers, and especially our keynote speaker, the Honorable Mrs. Abubakar. I'd like to also give a round of thanks to our executive management team for their support, and to the Women in TGI committee who helped make today's webinar possible. It's the first of its kind, and believe me when I say it's been a labor of love. So it's something we're all proud of. As Rafia mentioned, my name is Onome Agumate, and I'm the HR Director for the non-agribusiness here at TGI. A very proud TGIan, but also dear to my heart is the role that I play as the chair of the Women in TGI committee. So the Women in TGI is an initiative that's tasked with creating an equitable and inclusive workplace, one that gives associates, especially women, a sense of belonging, as well as bringing the gender diversity discourse to the fore of our business strategies. So these initiatives focus on 5 major areas that include attraction, selection, retention, development, and representation. So from a business leader perspective, and also from a female tribe perspective, prospective employees' decisions are not only values driven, meaning that when an employee is considering to join an organization, they're usually looking for an alignment between your corporate values and their own personal values. I mean, now it's more purpose driven, and in a more conscious world, both your future and even your current employees want to know what your ESG ratings are, for example, right? They want to see your proven track record. They want to see your plans for the future, because people want to do work that's meaningful and that they can be proud of. And so it's not surprising that in some countries who are further along in their sustainability and ESG journey, consumers are also in on it. So people want to spend their money on products and services from socially and environmentally responsible companies. One of those companies that come to mind is Patagonia Clothing Company. If you haven't heard of them, please look them up. They have a very wonderful story about sustainability and all of that. So without further ado, our topic of discussion today is building an inclusive and sustainable tomorrow, gender diversity and ESG. So we're going to explore the intersectionality between the two. What is the larger impact of sustainability when you embrace diversity? I mean, how does it affect your corporate performance, your stakeholders? What plans should we put in place for longer term sustainability? How do we embed this in our business strategies and practices? How do we develop or improve on standards? So we know what ESG is. Yes, we know what sustainability is, and definitely we know what diversity is, but the rich discussion today will explore the why of this imperative. I am not the expert, hence we've invited a seasoned panel of amazing women and a man who are actually the experts. So they will give us some insights on recent trends, theories, strategies, best practices that we're able to hopefully integrate into our business processes and practices. The Honorable Haja, Mrs. Abubakar, who so graciously accepted our invitation to be the keynote speaker, will open the discussion and give us some broad strokes about the topic today, and then this will be a segue into our panel discussion, which will be more industry specific. And the application of some of these practices, I mean, definitely they're going to differ from one business organization to another because there's a consideration for size, the industry that you're in, the location. But the takeaway today is that we have a collective duty to start from somewhere, from anywhere, to make this work for the common good. So the objective today is going to be to create awareness, to sound a clarion call, and to challenge you as leaders. And when I say leaders, bearing in mind that you don't need a title to be a leader, right? You've all heard that before. It's the contributions and the impact that you make that really make a difference. So not only challenge you as leaders, but also as change agents and as defenders of our environment to build a sustainable future without leaving anyone behind in consideration of equity and sustainability. But first, a few words from a star of the Women in TGI initiative, Mr. Farouk Gomel, our Group Executive Director and Executive Vice Chairman for Africa. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you, Onome, and good morning, everyone. And to our guests, I would like to start by thanking you all for making the time to join us in this very important session. Like Onome mentioned, Women in TGI, the initiative itself is a very important initiative. It's something that we really cherish simply because women must take the driving seat. Women are taking the driving seat in most of the projects, programs that we execute as a group. The theme of today's discussion is building on inclusive and sustainable tomorrow. And we have to start doing that today. And I'm glad to say that at TGI, we actually started doing it yesterday. Look at the composition of the panel we have, and I'll ask all the people that are listening to this event to actually go back and look at the profiles to understand what inclusion means to us at TGI. Everybody has a different background, although they are all women. If you look at the experience and the expertise they bring to the table, it's extremely diverse. And when you now superimpose that from how they operate, whether it is from Nigeria, from India, from Europe, and even within Nigeria, we have some women that are in our local and rural offices, while some operate in the urban offices. Some of them are in operations, some of them are in admin, some of them are in financial services, some of them are in agriculture. It kind of tells you how diverse each and every single person on the panel is. And so when we talk about women, we must never bucket them as just a gender matter. You must always bring in the experience and the expertise they bring to the table so that we fully appreciate the talent they bring. I always hear about, okay, we must listen to women, but also on the other side, the women must also speak up so that, you know, we all learn from them and learn from their experiences. And I'll just start briefly by talking about this level of diversity and bringing our keynote speaker into this. Hadia Aisha Abubakar is a great example of internal diversity. Herself as a person is extremely diverse. She was born in Sokoto and she went to secondary school in Lagos. So that actually tells you one change. From Lagos, she did her university in the United Kingdom. Another transition. So you now have Sokoto, Lagos, and UK. And then if you look at her work experience, she started in the private sector, but she worked especially in the banking sector, where she worked both in commercial banking, but also development banking. So there's a for-profit side of banking, and then also there's the developmental side of banking, which means impact. Then she moved into the government side of things, where she became a minister in the cabinet, both in industry, trade, and investment, with focus on small, medium-sized enterprises, and again, development financing from an export-import banking standpoint. And she was also briefly the Minister for Women Affairs and Social Development. So again, you could see there's talk about investment, but there's also, there's talk about trade and investment, but there's also talk about humanitarian issues, especially as it relates to women. And so her experience itself is something that we must all capture, we must all embed in our own mindset, and make sure that, you know, as we also try to shape our own careers and our own progression, we must never think of ourselves as a silo. We must never be comfortable where we are. We must always be ready to break barriers, to move into different places and learn. And that is the best way for you to add value. So I think those are my brief remarks on today's panel. And I congratulate all the women that are going to be talking today, including the representative of the men on that panel, and I congratulate them all. And I very much look forward to the insightful contributions that you're going to bring today. And I mean, let's all enjoy and let's all keep an open mind. Thank you very much and good morning.
Thank you, FG, for that introduction. Thank you very much. You've actually made my job very easy. I was going to do that already, but thank you very much. So we welcome Hadia Aisha Abubakar to the call, our keynote speaker. Good morning, and thank you for being here.
Good morning. Can you see me? Hello?
No, yeah.
Can you see me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Can't see you.
Oh dear. Okay. So this is technology at play. Let me see if I can get myself to be seen. While I'm trying to do that, let me not take too much time. First and foremost, let me thank the Vice Chairman, Africa, TGI Group. I don't know who he was talking about. It certainly wasn't me, but thank you very much. I must say how delightful I am to be invited to serve as a keynote speaker at the inaugural Gender Diversity and Environment, Social and Governance webinar being organized by the TIG Group, titled Building an Inclusive and Sustainable Tomorrow. The objective of the webinar, I understand, is to foster dialogue and share insights on how organizations can embrace diversity and sustainable practices for a more inclusive and responsible future. And I like the word responsible. Yeah. So what is gender diversity? And Onome has alluded to it, and the Vice Chair has also alluded to it. In a workplace, this means there's an equal proportion of gender represented with equal opportunities and fairness. In Nigeria, I am glad to say that some progress is being made, especially in the private sector, where we have witnessed a deliberate attempt to incorporate gender diversity strategies in the workplace. Subnationals in the country over the years have also taken giant steps to have proportionally gender diverse cabinets. However, I believe that the requisite shift will not happen until we realize that gender diversity is not about fulfilling all righteousness or filling quotas or meeting regulatory requirements. It is about the tangible and intangible values that come with it. A gender-balanced leadership has proven to have a more qualitative workforce that is more efficient, particularly in the utilization of resources. The workplace is more productive, more empathic, breeds confidence, general well-being, and growth. It is a place that recognizes equal opportunities and provides for initiative, innovation, skill development, and idea generation for all. Thus, exploring gender diversity and incorporating environmental, social, and governance principles is crucial for creating a more inclusive and sustainable future. This involves promoting equality, considering environmental impact, and maintaining ethical business practices. So, environmental principles means that businesses must incorporate sustainable practices to mitigate environmental risk, protect natural resources, and contribute to the global sustainability efforts. Nigeria, we have a history of environmental degradation, such as the massive oil spillage in the South-South, excessive gas flaring, unsophisticated mining techniques that continue to impact negatively on our environment, resulting in desertification, floods, incurable diseases, pollution, water, and so on. However, Nigeria has taken a giant step in committing to reaching net zero carbon by 2060. And to facilitate this and promote innovations in the green space, green bonds have been issuing green bonds to finance green projects. So what are you doing as TG? Hello. Wow.
Hello, we can hear you now. You went off for a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so now I'm on to the social aspect of the ESG. And for me, I think the strength of our dear country lies in our diversity. The richness of our heritage, with its numerous cultures, traditions, religious practices, and backgrounds, means that we must create a workplace that upholds all these differences, an enabling environment that is free of prejudice and stigmatization, an environment that shows care in the communities that we operate by engaging in social responsibility practices that will develop and foster development. This will help mitigate some of the struggles we are currently undergoing with social insecurity, banditry, kidnapping, girl child trafficking. There are just so many of them. And I said, this, whatever corporate social responsibilities that we're involved in, they must be fit for purpose. You must understand the localities, you must understand their demands before you put a solution in place. Don't do it from the top bottom. It has to come from the bottom to the top. Sometimes you think you're providing a solution, but ultimately you're probably creating more of a hindrance. And you go back in 6 months, and whatever it is that you've done is not functioning. So the governance aspect of it means transparency, accountability, and responsibility. These are practices that are in place to facilitate growth and development, not to prevent your corporate body from operating, but for you to be the best at what you're doing. A brand known for its ethical practices and grounded governance structure is more likely to stand the test of time than a brand tainted with allegations of bad practices. According to ESG Clarity, a top ESG intelligence group, climate change, emissions, and pollution were cited to be the environmental concerns for all retail and workers' rights and conditions, fairness and equality, and diversity were listed as being the forefront of investors' minds when it comes to social considerations. To be identified as a player in the global economy today, these are indices by which corporates will be measured by before a decision is taken to do business. And it's very clear now as mentioned earlier, a lot of the cloth branding companies, the cosmetics, the food, they're always now asking for the origin of where your commodities are coming from, where the resources are coming from. Thank the Vice Chairman of Africa, Farouk Gumel, and his team for the invitation to speak, and wish the panelists a fruitful deliberation. Thank you all for listening. I will sign out and sign back in so I can put my video on so you can all see me. But let me not hold the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ma, for the presentation. There was a lot to take away from it, although we lost you for quite a bit towards the end. But I was able to take a few notes here and there, and I feel like if I start talking about all the talking points, I might as well just take over the whole session. But we would need our panel to come on. Thank you, Ma. And yes, I'm very proud to say that the secondary school she went to in Lagos was the best one, QC. Thank you. So
sorry, I missed that. Are you an OGQ?
All right. So without further ado, I can't.
Yes, Ma, she is. Good morning, Ma. So am I.
Pass on the touch.
Yes, I'm a QCOG.
You see, we always find ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So there are a few people that QCOGs too that are nodding and texting me like, yes.
Oh, wow. Mr. Vice Chair, you're doing something definitely right.
Okay. So thank you very much,
You.
Ma. And
right.
Yes, I think that's one of the things that I wanted to point out from what you mentioned was on the social side, where everybody likes to do the nice things, the obvious things. But a lot of times it's always best to do a needs assessment where we're sure of what the community actually needs. I would borrow a story from Mr. Vice Chair. He always says it every time we go out and he's speaking somewhere and he's talking about how we can facilitate inclusion through impact. And he talked about a community, one of our farming communities where we went there and, we're talking about, let's do this school, let's do this hospital, this clinic and things. And after the whole session, they came to meet him after and they're like, do we have a say in what we want you to do for us? And he says, okay, yes, you do. And they said, okay, well, the cemetery or the graveyard in the community is on a slopy place. And when it rains, it washes and it makes the graves shallow and things like that. And we would want you guys to fence that. And that was really what they needed. And eventually we did that. And that community is one of the ones that we have high, we've had a good performance from them. Recovery is almost 100% all the time when we work with the farmers in that community, simply because they felt heard and they felt taken care of based on what they needed. So on the basis of that, I'd now want to introduce the panelists. I'm very happy about this combination because I know most of the people on this panel, and They're all quite sound in their respective fields. They sorry, where is it?
Rafiat, we cannot hear you.
Yes. So I'll start with Tolulope Babajide. She's the Gender Network Manager for FSD Africa. FSD is a non-profit organization that supports the development of inclusive financial markets across sub-Saharan Africa. She has over 8 years experience in economic inclusion, women's economic empowerment, market systems development, public policy, sustainable finance, management consulting, climate, value chains, and partnerships. She currently covers East and Southern African countries, Kenya, Rwanda, Zambia, Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa, Ethiopia, Mozambique, and Nigeria. Tolulope is passionate about ensuring that women have the opportunity and the strength to leverage any opportunity and become whatever they want to or whoever they want to be. She's worked at various intersection of sectors such as financial markets, agriculture, trade, to promote gender inclusiveness and increase women's participation. She loves to speak about it and write about the varied lived experiences of women and preferring realistic solutions to the barriers that constrain them. She's a learner and with a commitment to becoming a better version of herself every day. So, I mean, without talking too much, this is the combination of what we would want to bring people who are passionate about speaking and passionate about impact and passionate about learning as well. So it will be an exchange of ideas. She would be joining us shortly. So we'll move to the next person. Next, I would introduce is Maria. Maria Christodoulou is the head of cocoa sustainability for Fludo. Fludo is one of our companies operating in Ghana. She's a seasoned professional with 15 years of rich experience in international B2B environments, specializing in the chemical manufacturing, food and beverage manufacturing, as well as agri-commodity sectors. She holds an MSc in business administration in marketing management with honors from the Rotterdam School of Management, Erasmus University in the Netherlands, and a BA with honors in marketing and communications from the Athens University of Economics and Business, Greece. She started her career in the Netherlands after completing her MSc, and she joined International Flavors and Fragrances as a trainee. She advanced through various business units and emerged as a mature professional leading the marketing strategy for the company's confectionery and dairy portfolios. She spearheaded innovation projects and formed strategic partnerships with clients during her 13-year tenure at IFF. She's done a lot in the cocoa industry, and at the moment she serves as the head of cocoa sustainability at TGI Group. She leads a dedicated team working to create responsibly managed cocoa supply chains and ecosystems. Her responsibilities include designing Fludo's and WACOT's cocoa sustainability policies, responding to legislative developments, and ensuring business viability and profitability. Maria focuses on creating new business opportunities, improving internal systems, and strengthening the sustainability team with key new roles and skill sets. She played a pivotal role in launching Fluido's dedicated LinkedIn channel to position the company as a sustainability leader. Next would be Vivian from Union Bank. Funny enough, I've interacted with Vivian quite a lot and we've never seen. So Vivian is a seasoned professional. She's the head of retail banking and SME in Union Bank. She's a seasoned professional with 24 years of experience repositioning retail businesses, implementing retail expansion plans, driving sales and marketing strategies, and achieving significant retail business growth. With her excellent knowledge of customer segmentation, experience, and products, she has successfully developed and executed initiatives to achieve sustainable and professional growth, drive product usage, and customer loyalty. Vivian she holds a master's degree in international law and diplomacy from University of Lagos. She has attended executive programs at Harvard Business School, McKinsey Leadership Academy, Retail Banking Institute, and Lagos Business School. She's a member of the Customer Experience Professionals Association and an honorary senior member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers. The next would be Yosola. Yosola is the head of corporate responsibility and sustainability at TGI. She's a sustainability expert with over 10 years experience spanning industries such as like FMCG, agribusiness development, legal, and power sector. Yosola has in-depth field and product knowledge and experience across sub-Saharan Africa, where she simultaneously leads program managers and large project field teams across multiple business and origin locations. She has a master's degree and with a distinction in energy, environment, and natural resource law, and with distinction from the University of Houston, Texas, a master's degree in oil and gas enterprise management from the University of Aberdeen, and a Bachelor of Law degree from the University of Hertfordshire. Next, I'd introduce is Habiba Suleiman. Habiba currently heads strategic partnerships here at TGI Group. Her diverse track record spans over 10 years across agribusiness, investment banking, impact investments, development research, gender and social inclusion. She has an MSc in policy and development studies, a master's in conflict, peace and strategic studies, and a BSc in international studies. She holds an ACCA diploma in accounting and business, among several certifications. And then after, I'd introduce Olumide Yusuf. He's a graduate of, Olumide Yusuf is head of research development in WACUBE. WACUBE is one of our companies. He's a graduate of chemical and polymer engineering from Lagos State University, Ojo, and he holds a Master of Process Engineering degree from University of Lagos. He has built a career in research and development, which spans over 12 years in multinational organizations, where he's both pioneered and headed, right now, West African Cubes Limited. He pioneers and heads R&D departments. His expertise in food development spans across multiple products in different categories, including seasonings, dairy and non-dairy based beverages, mayonnaise, and so on. There's one more person, Samira Bello, but she's having a bit of technical issues. So I'll just quickly say that she has 5 years. She's the head of partnerships for Thrive Agric, and she'll be joining us shortly. So is everybody here? Okay. So I think that we can start off from where the keynote speakers started or stopped. Well, we can go off of what she said. And I'll start with the agri sector because it's easy to connect that with local communities and stuff. So first of all, I would like to go around the room 1 minute. Just your perspective generally on the topic, and then we'll start the discussion from there. So maybe I can start with Habiba.
Thank you, Rafiat. Very delighted to be here. Good morning, everybody. And yeah, very, very important, really. I really think that there's no better time to have these discussions. Diversity is intersecting with everything as we know it today. ESG today is everywhere, it's undercutting every issue, every segment of business, every segment of industry. You know, and for us at TGI, it's very critical that whatever we do, wherever we find ourselves, whether in communities, whether in the FMCG space, we're very conscious of and ensuring that we're integrating these issues, and it's positively impacting the way that we work, you know, across our businesses. I'm going to stop here for now.
Okay, but before I move to the next person, I would want to ask you though that how or what strategies have been the most effective in breaking down gender-based barriers and biases in agric education and training programs?
Okay, yeah, so I think very key. We were very deliberate about stakeholder engagements. This is something that has worked, and I love that you mentioned baseline assessments at the beginning, right? So we're very big on not imposing and not just, you know, sort of yeah, just imposing what we think communities need, right? At the beginning of every project, we do baseline assessments to understand what their specific needs are and how we can better serve them. So this means that if you go to a community where you do not have a lot of women inclusion as you'd like, we do not just go and say, oh, bring out all the women. We want to understand why are they not included, what's happening, what are your cultural systems, what are the social cultural factors in place, and how can we then sensitize, right? So in most cases, it's really a factor of culture or a social context, right? So how do we sensitize those communities, key stakeholders, cross-cutting sensitization, advocacy. So we speak with the emir, we speak with the government, the state government, the community leaders, the husbands of these women. You know, in most places where we go, we need to speak to the husbands to give us access to their wives. These are all things that we're very conscious of because we don't want to just barge in and disrupt systems, right? Another thing we do is we're deliberately embedding women into the program management as well. So we have women in our field offices, we have women as extension service agents, so that we're also making it easy and comfortable for the women in these communities to want to interface with women, female staff, right? As against just saying, oh, you have to deal with male staff. And again, a lot of these things we have to be very deliberate about because it's not mainstream. You don't have a lot of women in boots in farming communities, training people on how to farm, you know, training them how to practicalize good agronomic practices. So these are things that we've been deliberate about over time to embed, you know, across our projects. And very lastly, our training programs, like you mentioned, right? So as you know, we're building the academies and all of those. And we're very deliberate about gender mainstreaming ideals, you know, modules into training programs. And this means that even for the men on the project, we know that they also have to be conscious of gender biases, gender ideals, and so that they're not unconsciously just transmitting things that are not gender positive, you know, in the community. So obviously, like I mentioned, there's that intersection that you have with economic, with social, with environmental impacts of issues as it interfaces, as it affects communities. And how do you make sure that everybody is in tune and is educated enough to know how to work? I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you very much, Habiba. And I would want to come to Maria because I know that, you know, you do work outside of Nigeria a lot. And I wanted to ask that what is your own experience in engaging with local communities? You know, you need indigenous knowledge and all those things to ensure that there's inclusivity and sustainability. So take us through your perspective on that.
Definitely. Thank you, Rafiat. And before I start, I also would like to thank you very much for having me in this panel. So a lot has been said by Habiba. So I don't know how much I can contribute more. But I do believe I'm working for Flood Organa Limited mainly. And, you know, to engage in community engagement is fundamental to initiate any sort of sustainability initiative. I think what is very important is to build trust relationships between the agri-commodity and the community members. And this can be achieved by having really a dedicated team on the ground that is always present, that is known and accessible by the community members. You need to build community-led interventions, whereas you very well mentioned before, community members need to participate actively, to be in the driver's seat and not the executors only, and have high decision-making power. It's important to have a specialized committee, specially designed committees to tackle certain issues like child labor, forced labor, and of course gender issues. So to appoint a committee that is responsible for routine gender risk assessment and the implementation and monitoring and evaluation of measures that promote gender equality and inclusion. And of course, you need to have members that are very, very knowledgeable of the topic, and women's representing, of course, the group. Something which I think hasn't been mentioned so far is the grievance mechanism systems, which should be very much in the heart of any community and any community development program that we do in cocoa and other commodities. So grievance mechanism systems where women can take up complaints, violations of their rights and any other grievance and seek redress accordingly.
Thank you very much, Maria. I would still come back to you to just talk a bit about your experience with the new regulation, the one we're discussing just a few weeks ago, and how you are able to translate that into practicality in the community. So we'll move a bit away from agric. I'm coming back to agriculture, but I want to go to Vivian. So what, in your view, what strategies have been most effective in increasing the representation of women in leadership roles in financial institutions and maybe even government agencies, maybe public sector and private sector generally?
Thank you, Afia. Thank you for having me. Okay, so let me try. I would think it's a combination of so many things. I would say it's policy. I would say it's leadership backing. I would say it is awareness. I think the since 1999 and 1995, I think, when we had the Beijing Declaration adopted by the United Nations, there has been a more deliberate and coordinated action from government and corporate entities around the world to include women in high-profile leadership positions. I think that women, then we've also started to have forward-thinking leading people in the right places that encourage the women to speak for themselves and represent themselves. I think that the 2015 SDG 5 on gender equality also helped Nigeria to update its policies on inclusion and empowerment for women. I think that this affirmative action has helped the policy bridge gender gap and allowed more qualified women to step up. I also think that women have also started to believe in themselves more and allow themselves copy responsibilities and fight for their place in government and in leadership. That'll be my thought.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Interesting perspective. So I'll come with Olumide because now it's going to look like I'm putting you on the spot, but here we are. Since our vice chairman said you are the representative of the men. So I just want to ask, speaking of, progressive thinking in leadership and based on what Vivian has just said, generally in the corporate environment, leaders who are willing to give people the opportunity and things like that. What's your view on what you think would be the most effective or is the most effective strategy in increasing representation of women in leadership roles generally?
Thank you, Rafiat. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to the team for having me on this panel. I know I'm the only man on this panel, but somehow the men are also represented. Thank you very much. To answer the question, I would just like to start by saying you cannot keep talking about representation or gender diversity when you don't make deliberate efforts to make it happen. And what I mean by that is you're talking about how well women can be represented, or how much women, how many more you could have in the industrial space. And there are no examples to show. You know, you can't keep telling somebody a woman should be this, a woman should be that. And they look at your system and the entire leadership is composed of men. So what you are actually doing does not align with what you are trying to pass across. So for me, one critical point I think should be emphasized, and which is happening in many places, is the fact that we need to have women in leadership positions. We need to have more women in critical positions now. Sometimes it may take a while to get to leadership position. I understand that. But there are certain roles that are crucial. They're like the fulcrum of certain businesses. And so in those places where they decide the things that happen, or the direction of activities define a lot of things, the more women we see there, the more it inspires other people in the future to know that it's possible. So on the one hand, you are telling them what is possible, and on the other hand, you are showing them that they are living examples of how this thing is possible. So for me, the main point I will start with mentioning is to just say that we need to have more women in leadership. We need to have more women in critical positions. With that, we can easily sell the message of how much diversity is necessary and can be achieved in the system.
I was not responsible for your selection to the panel, just so you know, but I'm very happy about this selection because I've just read in your bio that, you know, your wife is an engineer and you have 3 girls. So I understand your perspective.
Rafiat, may I add something, please, here?
Yes, please go ahead,
Yes,
Maria.
so it's also important that this vision is translated into concrete action. So, for example, when we talk about we want more women being in higher ranks, does the company have career development paths for women?
Yeah.
Or does the company create this enabling environment for women that have certain needs, you know, to grow and to develop? Just a short comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria. So I think that on the basis of that, can we now go back into my question earlier about
On the
how you are able
legislation.
to, yes.
Yes, so just to give a little bit of context, we see that sustainability used to be more a nice to have, then it became the right thing to do. Now it's really a business mandate, and it's really becoming the license to operate, especially for certain commodities like cocoa. European Union, which is the most important export market for cocoa from West Africa and for other commodities, voted the European deforestation legislation, which will come into effect from 2025. So if companies, you know, cannot prove through due diligence and specific statements attached to each batch of cocoa that the cocoa doesn't come from deforestation-free areas, then the cocoa will be banned. And of course, this has very important consequences. So this legislation comes with certain requirements. Of course, we need, as Flood Organa and VACOT Nigeria, to make some changes in our supply chain. We need to establish traceability back to plot level, which is not an easy thing. So even if we can go back to the farmer level and we know which farms are belong to each farmer, the new step is that each batch of cocoa will need to indicate the specific plots where the cocoa came from. So first of all, we need to do 100% mapping to know exactly where the cocoa is coming from, and to introduce very robust traceability systems, and to have also a contingency plan. So we do deforestation risk assessment, and we then publish, because that should go public, to publish a plan that shows what action we will take to mitigate the risks. So definitely community engagement is very important, but I trust that in both supply chains of TGI, we have very strong presence and very strong programs. So it's something that we can do.
Great. So I'll come to your solar. So what are the potential economic benefits? Because I feel like for some of us, or for some people, it's easier to just think that everybody knows, but there are some things that I found that it's not everybody that knows. So what are the potential economic benefits for agriculture businesses that prioritize gender diversity and sustainability in their operations? And how can you, communicate this to stakeholders where they see it as an advantage and they are willing to also put in their quota to make it happen?
Thank you, Rafiat. Good morning, everyone. And I'm happy that this is a question that came to me because I'm very big on, bringing profit out of sustainability and ESG. So I'll start by saying, based on our topic for today's webinar, you cannot build an inclusive and sustainable tomorrow or business without gender diversity. It's a key catalyst, not just for ESG information or topic, is a key driver in really bringing out ESG outcomes and accelerating its delivery, also acting as a positive multiplier, which brings me to your question about the potential economic benefits for agricultural businesses such as TGI, which some of our subsidiaries are very major players in this space. I'm going to talk about ensuring that this area strengthens your supply chain. For any agribusiness, your supply chain is a major connector to your business, your bottom line, and everything. Now, you have to strengthen your supply chain in order to make it profitable, make sure that, okay, there's some economic value. And this is one way you can do that through gender diversity, making sure that, you have embedding ESG practices through the women in your supply chain. For example, one thing that we have done is we were able to identify in one of our programs, how do we strengthen, the outcome of the work that we do. Now, we observed from our study that women are much, or they produce better, or they have much more strength in certain activities, and from the men in vice versa. And we were able to compartmentalize activities for men and women, the less tedious for women, in a way that was more productive. And this strengthened the supply chain by making sure that the women are engaged, the men are also engaged, and there's also, wages that are given to both men and women in a way that everyone is happy and is also compliant with their expectations. Now, what this did for us is to cut production time. It strengthened our supply chain by increasing the yield and produce that we had at the end of the day. This, if you put all the data together, there's a direct connection between this kind of activity to the economic benefits of the program, because we got, higher value, more produce to sell. So there was a direct economic benefit in that. Another thing is also, community development in terms of training and bringing out the other gifts that are in the people in your community. For example, when we work agribusinesses, businesses that are based on crops which are also seasonal, because for some of these crops there's no all-year production. Now, what are these people doing? What are the people in your supply chain? What are they doing when the crops are off season? Right? How are you strengthening the economy even when they're not producing? It's by including other skills, enhancing other skills in them, that once they improve in certain skill sets, it is directly transferable to your supply chain, hereby increasing the economic benefit as well. So I'll stop there for now, Rafia, so I don't take too much time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yosola. You know how it is. We can keep going on and on and on. There's so much to talk about. 90 minutes is not enough. It's not nearly enough to discuss everything. But so I'll come back to Habiba, because I know that you've worked on some projects, some partnerships that have helped with some that has some gender elements to it. Case in point would be the project with West Africa Trade and Investment Hub with Wakot Rice in Kebbi. So what challenges do women face in accessing finance and resources for agricultural entrepreneurship, and how can these barriers be overcome?
Okay, thank you again, Rafiat. And obviously, just to again give context, when we started the project, there were just about 30 women or so that were involved in the agro program and accessing support and agri finance and trading support, like the male farmers were. But when we wrapped it up, we have over 1,000 women, I think, at the moment. And this speaks to the fact that there are women that can be involved, but you need to break the barriers, you know. So what do you need to do? Again, in terms of understanding what is blocking them from accessing the support that they need. This is an economic activity, right? People need to do these things to earn incomes, to better their livelihoods. And it's not enough to just give only 50% of the community all that support. You know, how do you make sure that it goes around, everybody accesses it? And what are those things that are blocking people, and how do you, dismantle those issues, right? So for us, the key things we identified again is really the social cultural context. And like Yosola was mentioning, it's about identifying what works for them, right? Are they not very comfortable coming out to access the agri inputs? Are they even identified, right? Do people even know them? Do they know that they need this support? So unlike the men that are able to, cluster themselves, network, and know where to access stuff, most of these women are providing childcare services at home. They are doing household chores and all of this. So they really do not have that much access, to these kinds of support and initiatives that are supporting people. So for us, it was really about going to these communities, speaking to the men, like I said. So again, identifying who is already accessing support. How do we say, you have about 5 hectares. What of your wife? Why don't you give her 1 hectare of land? Do we need to speak to people higher up, traditional leadership? In Kebbi, for example, we spoke to the emir. We have women that are interested. We've sensitized them. We've identified them. Can we get land allocated for these women to cultivate? We're happy to do the land clearing. In most cases, you have to go a step further to do something that you were not doing before, right? And obviously, this is why a lot of our agro programs fall under our corporate responsibility and sustainability, because we understand that some of these things you just really have to do to help these people. So does this mean clearing land for free? Does this mean training women for free, incentivizing them? What do you need to do? So in lots of cases, we try to identify some of these things, whether, like I said, is allocating free land, helping them clear the land, giving them all the inputs. For the women, for example, specifically, we provided irrigation support because they did not have irrigation support, and it was dry season farming. So all of these issues were part of things that we had to go out of our way to do. And obviously, I know we'll come to financial inclusion later, but again, on financial inclusion, you'll see that a lot of these women really were just not allowed to own bank accounts. So does this mean speaking to the men in their lives, their guardians, their husbands, and telling them, they will not disrespect you if they own bank accounts. They will still be good wives or whatever it is, but let them have access to their money. Because we also saw that when we succeeded in getting the women to farm, when it's time to get paid for their produce, we have to pay through bank accounts of some of the men in their communities. Sometimes they do not give them all the money, right? So all of these issues, again, demands that you're very willing and present enough to study and understand what these issues are. And again, like Maria mentioned, so locally led systems, participatory. You don't want to just come and impose because you're very conscious of not disrupting systems. So how do you, carry them along in such a way that they do not feel like you're their foe, you're a friend, and you're a partner in growth. So that is really the approach that we've employed so far, and it's been working.
Thank you, Habiba. That was very practical, and I'll now link it to the financial inclusion drive with Union Bank that was launched last year, where there was a lot of work between Wakotra's, Union Bank, TGI, where we worked with communities and all. And I know that there was a portion of it that was for just the women to do their registration, to do all of that and onboard them onto the financial system. So I would want to come to Vivian with that question and talking about access to finance as well for women, especially not just in agriculture, but generally women entrepreneurs and all those types of people. Like, what are the barriers that you see when it comes to access to finance for women?
Thank you, Rafiat. And I think Habiba has started it. I think is it's social, it's cultural. So she mentioned about the North, where you have to think about the religious limitations where some women tend to stay at the background, the forefront of it are men. In my former life, we even had government get involved somewhere in Ekiti and sent funds to women through mobile money. And we found out that when we were going to do the payouts, the men showed up. Where it wasn't the men, it was their kids that showed up to take the money on their behalf. One of the barriers we also have are for women themselves. Women are secretive about money. They don't want people to know about their money, particularly the grassroots. So you see people who are micro entrepreneurs, they're hiding their money in their stores. And when it's time to give them loans, you're asking them, we want history. What history is at the back of their shop? Women themselves sometimes put themselves at the back of family priorities. So when you talk about land collaterals, for instance, most times when you want to take money, you need to provide landed properties. Most women don't have properties in their names. It's either in their husband's name, or sometimes they don't even show up at all. So I think part of the attempts that have been made, even in collaboration with CBN, is to try to work with us to come up with specialized initiatives that put women together in groups, so that even if as an individual you cannot stand on your own, collective lending helps people speak for you. So it's sometimes no longer about the individual, it's about the integrity of the individual in the midst of groups. It's about training people to believe in themselves. We have a lot of women who, like where I come from in the East, in some cases, men don't want the women to work. They just want them to be taking care of kids, and at some point you need to step up to become a breadwinner. What do you do? So part of that is also trying to train them and find partnerships to start at lending at a micro level. So for instance, in Union Bank, we launched a female banking proposition called Alpha. At its launch, we're able to source for discounted loan facilities of about 73.2 billion. We had over 115,000 women-owned businesses, and we looked for partners like TGI to be able to reach out to women at their location, to be able to say to them that, look, we're able to find you mentors, we're able to provide you the training that you require to improve. We're able to take a chance and a gamble at you. We're willing to find partners who would give you easy access to things that might be difficult. We meet you at your using agency banking. We also introduce agency banking to them, because agency banking is something that allows you to have access to financial resources and even empower you without you necessarily leaving your own location. So we have a lot of women stepping up to become agents and are able to make money and become breadwinners even in their own homes. I hope I've answered that question, Rafia.
Yes, thank you, Vivian. And I would ask you one last question, because we're running out of time and I want everybody to give their parting shot. So I'll ask you one last question and I'll go to everybody else. So in just 1 minute, how do you think that organizations can address intersectionality within gender diversity metrics? Obviously, so when we're talking about gender diversity, we're talking about men, women, but then there are other factors: age, race, ethnicity, and also how do you think that, how can we address it to ensure that there's a comprehensive approach to making sure that everybody is fine somewhat?
I think it's by carrying all stakeholders along, looking for forums that makes people's voice be heard, because sometimes you can't know it all. I think that in trying to come up with policies that gets people involved, employees, customers, and a wider stakeholders who probably have more technical know-how in that area of specialty would allow you to cover it. It's also to what Olumide had alluded to before, putting your actions where, putting your money or your actions where your mouth is, by documenting them and being deliberate about making sure that you show that these things are important to you and you execute it in a way that it's transparent for everybody to know. That would be weird. So for instance, internally, for women, we have a WeHub in Union Bank, where it's for employees within the space. We're deliberate about, and it's communicated that a percentage of our employees have to be women. On the board and in the exco, there is a percentage of women sitting on the board that is even higher than international standards. So I think it's about getting a large number of stakeholders to be involved in coming up with the policies, making it transparent for everybody to see, and where you do not have the expertise, please seek it. That's just what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivian. And I think that you've addressed some of what I wanted to say. So I would want everybody to just give us one last thing, especially around avoiding tokenism, where we're just ticking boxes and, so how do we really ingrain this into the corporate culture? Before, I would start with Olumide, but before I start, I would want to say that if anybody has questions, please drop it in the Q&A or the chat box, and then we'll take it later. There were some questions that we already compiled during registration, so we'll be asking that shortly. But if you have any questions, please drop it in the chat box or in the Q&A. So Olumide, please, 1 minute.
Thank you, Rafiat. I will do my best to do 1 minute. First of all, I want to say that I think we also need a mental shift. And this particularly will be addressing the men who are listening, because sometimes people get the impression that when you talk gender diversity and inclusion, you're trying to lower the standard. That is not the situation. I'll give you an example. Today, I have 2 ladies working with me in R&D department. And when we set out to recruit, I didn't set out to recruit either male or female. We set the questions, we did everything. And it happened that the people who came tops or were selected were the females. So it wasn't a case of trying to lower the standard for them to come on board. It was just that there needed to be a catalyst, something put in place to be intentional. So I think that is very important to mention. And then I would also speak about very quickly, in manufacturing. You don't find too many women, which is a situation. And I think it's because of the evolution of work, if you ask me. Work started with a very high level of manual intervention, lifting, carrying. These days you have automation. So you have ladies who can operate high-powered machines. And it doesn't mean that because they're women, they cannot do the job. As a matter of fact, in WACU, our HR always says that the best machine operator is a female in WACU today. So there is really no limitation as to some of these things. I think basically we need to be more deliberate. Finally, I'll just add that when it comes to issues of work-life balance, I think those are things that need to be considered for females particularly, because many women have to work and then they have to take care of the home front. So for a woman, it's more important to know that there are certain limitations or constraints you cannot subject her to because of other things that she has. I think workplaces need to become more conscious of this, and this way we can get more women involved. So it's not about lowering the standard. It's about allowing the barrier for entry to be more open so that we can have more women intervention and participation. That'll be all from my side, Rafiat.
Thank you very much, Olumide. So I'll move to Maria, then Yosola, then Habiba to close.
Yes, thank you, Rafiat. So I think tokenism is a topic that needs attention. I think a lot can be done if companies, commit to make public commitments and commit to reporting, so they become accountable for what they put forward. I think companies should prioritize the gender-related metrics that they need to report to. If they don't have a framework, I would suggest that they use a framework that is recognized universally and also used very much across COCO sector, like the Sustainable Development Goals, which have a specific goal on gender diversity with certain metrics. And then the companies need to commit to time-bound targets and progressive targets. So they commit to report annually, on an annual basis, how they progress. And coming back to what I mentioned before, they need to create structures and adjust their business model internally to create an enabling environment to honor these commitments. So what I mentioned before about HR practices on career development path of women, or having specific infrastructure for women that are breastfeeding or having small kids, or for example, strengthening your internal skills and capabilities with the right, with the right skills. So, for example, having teams focusing on monitoring and evaluation. So people that really are responsible to collect this data, analyze this data, and report internally and externally.
Thank you, Maria, for that. So I'll move to your solar now so that we can wrap up. By the way, there's a question in the Q&A, and I like the question very much. Olumide, since you're in the manufacturing environment, so I'll be giving you that question to answer. So just think on it while we go.
Okay.
When we move to the next thing, when we get to the Q&A, that will be the first thing we would address. So please,
Okay.
your solar.
Thank you so much. What Olumide and Maria has said is so good. I was just taking it in. Major takeaway that I want everyone to leave with is, gender diversity is interwoven into every aspect of an organization, or should be, and is interwoven into every aspect of the ESG framework. Now, I'm piggybacking off what Olumide and Maria have said, as well as Habiba and everyone else. But there's a virtuous relationship between I'm going to pick up the governance aspect of ESG, right? So governance and gender diversity, or gender, I would say equality as well, is the most dominant aspect to integrate into any organization. Now, when women are present, like everyone has said, in senior executive roles, in board positions, that way they are integrated and have direct influence over key decisions, over the systems of internal control and every other governance activity. So the more gender balance there is at the top, there's a culture that is now developed, which will now be cascaded into leadership behaviors that is now positively impacting, decision making across the wider and the smaller sections of ESG dimensions in any organization. And for example, this will lead to, empowering partnerships with social stakeholders. You are now raising trust levels with your stakeholders and partners. They are now raising your environmental standards. You're setting policies that is now trickling down into the entire space of the business that you operate. And of course, what does this do over time? Over time, this will now further iterate and show that, this is an organization or an enterprise that has become more visible for a purpose-driven, objective that we stand for. And you are now able to invest more deliberately in integrating ESG outcomes into strategic decision-making process. So that's what those would be my final words on that. Thank you so much, Rafiat.
Thank you very much, Yosola. So Habiba, and before once Habiba is done, I want to ask a question to our keynote speaker, because first of all, I would want to hear her perspective on all of these things. It would be nice to see how all this English that our panelists have been speaking, based on their experience in the corporate environment, how it really applies, especially because you have experience in public sector and having worked as a minister and also how did that really work for you? So I would come to that, but I want Habiba to give us a parting shot. So please, 1 minute. Thank you.
I think she's frozen.
Okay, so we can't hear her, so maybe we'll just move to our keynote speaker. Then she would anyway be sharing some things with us after, so we can take a few comments. But please, Ma, I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think our panelists have spoken and have spoken in the right direction. First and foremost, there has to be policy. There has to be a framework. You have to be seen to be walking the talk. So you not just to have things in place, but you have to be practically implementing a lot of what you say you're going to do about gender diversity. You have to, sometimes I feel like the world is now becoming First, there was a rush for profit, and now we're back to the rush for ensuring that we're doing things the proper way. You have to have governance structures. You have to have ethical business practices. You have to ensure that so many other social factors are embedded in your business practices. Care for the local community, care for children's welfare, care for women, and all of that. And truth be told, everywhere I have gone and everywhere I have sat where there are a number of women in leadership position, the entire environment is different. God didn't create men and women, to do the same thing. Definitely not. So when policies are being made, there are certain aspects when there's a woman seated there that the men do not see or cannot feel. There's a certain atmosphere in a workplace when there's a balance. So with this balance, you're able to grow. So that's what I was referring to when I said the tangibles and the intangibles. There's certain things that you cannot explain, but there's a woman. And to tell you a story, I remember once a friend of mine got a flat, furnished it all, and was so excited and invited us to come and see. The flat was all black, completely black. And we said, why is I don't want to worry about dirt. I don't want to worry about this. I don't want to. By the time we've put in a few colors, throw pillows and all of that. And this is something that has to be reflected. There are certain things that men cannot see, but women can, and there are certain things that women cannot see. And then in terms of business practices, especially in local communities, which I also alluded to, the respect for whatever community you're working with. Some communities do not allow women to go to certain places, but the men can. What structures can you put in place to ensure inclusivity, to ensure that everyone is being carried along? If women are, for example, in the north now, where you have a lot of women who do not go out, what can you do to make sure that their business practices are respected, that they're able to run businesses? You find a system that works for them. Again, talking about social responsibilities, there was a community where we went to work when I was the minister. I wanted to put in water pumps, and we put in water pumps, and then someone came and reported the water pumps you put, they remove the heads, and we said, why did they remove the heads? So the woman said, this is the only time we get to go to the river to wash our hair, wash our clothes, bond with women, share whatever issues. And we do this once a week. Now, when we have the water pumps, the husbands will tell us what is available over everywhere. So we can't go there, So, I mean, we need to be understanding. We need to do the needs assessment, and we need to. So having women in leadership positions, I cannot say how important it is. And it has also been alluded to. It is no more something you need to do. It is something that must be done. So I think I'll just end on that note.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ma, for your contribution. It's been invaluable, and thank you to all the panelists. Thankfully, I was trying to save time, and the question that was asked in the comments section about ladies not being allowed to do night shifts has been answered by one of our lawyers from Wako Trice, where she's mentioned that Nigeria's labor law does not allow women to work on to be employed on night work in public or private organizations, especially in agri and industrial settings. So I'll hand over to Kende now. We'll only be able to take 2 questions from the ones that were collated during registration, and then we'll move to wrap up. And also, please, guys, 1 minute to answer the questions. Please keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you very much to all the panelists. I've learned a lot in this short time, a whole lot. I'm surprised how much I've learned. But I mean, I've gotten good takeaways from this session. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to shoot a question to Abibat. There's an area I didn't hear much about, which is technology. So I'm going to throw this technology question to you. So what role can technology play in empowering women in agriculture? Is that on the call?
Yes. So sorry, my network had issues, so I had to switch to another device. But yeah, so obviously, with the agro farmers that we work with, there's lots of mapping, getting the coordinates of their farms, doing the registrations, getting their IDs. And a lot of that requires tech, you know, and apps and all of those things to get access to these kinds of information and keep them in such a way that you're not losing them in 1 month or 2 months, right? So what we've done with tech is that we've been able to, so in Cheppy, for example, we deployed the Workout Price app. And what that did was we sort of had this very front end access, you know, field officers could use their phones to get farmer data, provide real-time information. And even when you go to areas where there's no network, that data still gets uploaded to the cloud and all of those stuff. So for us, really, tech is very critical in embedding all of these issues. So whether you're bringing trainings to the table, whether you're bringing access, you know, to finance, the financial inclusion drive that we run is really just important to make sure that it's accessible, and we're ensuring that technology is brought in such a way that everybody can use it. You know, it's not very high end, it's not very technical, and everybody can interface with it as they need to.
Thank you, Abiba. My next question goes to Vivian. So what are the best practices for promoting financial literacy amongst women?
Sorry, did you say best practices?
Yes.
Well, I would say it would be transparency. It would be building products and solutions with the woman in mind. I think we had talked about the limitations that we have in terms of their access to financial services. I think there shouldn't be a one size fits all. We should take into consideration their unique needs, their environment, and provide offerings that suit their needs at the point in time. And yes, it's not peculiar to just women, but that's what clustering and segmentation is about. So that's the best practice. Build with the customer in mind.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you for that. We said we're going to take 2 questions, but we have one in the chat box, so we'll just take the last question before we close out this Q&A session. And I'll give this to Yosola. The question goes, does TGI have ESG targets? I think the segue to that is, my screen is going up. If we do, how are we leveraging partnerships to take us closer to achieving our ESG targets?
Thank you, Kendi. That's actually a really good question. So one of the core values of TGI, sustainability is one of our core values, and that just shows how embedded it is in our operations across TGI. Yes, we do have ESG targets, and the ESG targets, if I were to go into the targets, we will not leave this meeting today. However, I'm going to be making a presentation much later, which will speak to the TGI sustainability pillars. So we have embedded ESG targets into every part of our sustainability pillars, and I'll speak more to that during my presentation. Now, to answer the second question, what we do, so we're not an organization that is just available for every partner who wants to drive a sustainability impact project to come and partner with. No, we made sure that we have our own sustainability objectives, and what we do is look for alignment. So if an organization wants to partner with us, we have to first of all identify what are the similar objectives and targets that we both have to drive the sustainability impact that we want to achieve for us as a business, connected to the value chain, the supply chain, connected to the bottom line, as well as the reach that we want to have. So that is how we leverage on partnerships, and we do have a lot of partners. I mean, Habiba can also even allude to that, you know, considering that she just, you know, championed very successfully a major partnership for TGI with the WATI project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so thank you to all our panelists. We're choosing to not be selfish because we're trying to keep to time. So we were supposed to do a presentation to show what we're doing with the rice project with women, and then with on share as well, but we will not be able to take that. At some point in the course of the year, before the end of the year, we will share it across our social media platforms. So You can follow us on social media. We'll share more details on that. So I'll just want to call on Tanvi, who is also a member of the advisory board for the Women in TGI committee, to share the key takeaways from the webinar, and then we'll bring on our executive director, Dr. Remi Oni, to bring the webinar to a close.
Okay. Afternoon, everybody. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to our keynote speaker as well for some wonderful insights that were shared. So a couple of points. My key takeaways from today's session is, first of all, is the importance of the intersectionality. I think a lot of us have spoken about it, between ESG and diversity and inclusion. So why these are two very core pillars and values that drive the TGI ethos. So Yusola did allude to that earlier in her summary as well. And a couple of other things that came to my mind from all of the discussions today is the importance of being very intentional in doing and in creating a more inclusive environment across different touch points in all our agri-value chains, right? So some of it was learning for me as well in terms of looking at different facets of that journey, including a needs assessment, training, and all of the different efforts and initiatives that are taken, sometimes painstaking initiatives, to ensure that there's greater participation of women. And this in turn ensures a collective economic upliftment of the communities as a whole. Another thing is the importance of being very purpose-driven in what we do, and ensure that we walk the talk from the standpoint of looking at the lens of the private sector as a whole, right? So there was a lot of conversations about how can we get more women in leadership roles, and how can we ensure that there are women or greater participation of women across different levels, across different functions, industry sectors. Of course, we're a conglomerate, so we operate in a lot of different industries. And I think the biggest testimony to that is the creation of the Women in TGI initiative, which is a very important vehicle to drive this. There are a couple of initiatives that we've already, or the team has already launched over the course of the year. And there's a lot more transformative ideas in the pipeline to creating a very deliberate roadmap. So again, the key word here being intentional in what we're doing over the next 5 years. So very excited about that. There's a lot of great stuff already happening, even across a lot of our value chains, agri-value chains, in cashew, shea, for example. They're heavily driven by amazing women farming communities. If you look at it from other sectors as well, like the financial services, there was a note made by Vivian on the joint efforts between Union Bank and within TGI Group, TGI Industry, one of our business units, are working very closely with the Women's World Banking to create a digital credit solution for over 50,000 micro entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs. So all of these are just some examples of seeing how we are being very intentional and deliberate in sort of driving the change and moving in a positive manner, shifting the needle. So yeah, one more thing I would like to say, I know it's nothing to do with agri and nothing to do with business maybe, but it is very, very important for us to all ensure that in all walks of life, we have our male allies who are supporting us in this journey, right? It is a collective endeavor. So I do know that we had a few men speaking today, but they're very, very critical. All of them are critical. I have been on the side pushing and prodding a lot of our team members to join and different business units. I do see some of their names there, so thank you for that. None of this would be possible if we don't create a culture or a supportive environment at home. So I know a lot of us within the audience today are proud girl dads. Please keep encouraging and championing your daughter's dreams, your sisters, your wives, and you know that's creating that enabling environment starts from the home. So I just wanted to mention that. Yeah, that's it from me. And of course, a great job by the project committee. So thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you very much, Tanvi. That was really good, and what you ended with is really key. If the support is not there from home, some of us are beneficiaries of dads who would push us everywhere and anywhere. So, it's a very good point to make. So I would call on the group HR director, because I'm not sure that I see Dr. Remy on here. So I'll call the group HR director, Akinkule Akinpelu, to just give us the closing remarks. And then I'll do what I was supposed to do at the beginning of the event, which was to introduce myself and the co-anchor. So, Aki, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rafiat. It's been a very interesting session this morning to the afternoon. Special thanks to Honorable Aisha Abubakar. Ajia, thank you so much for coming. It's been very, very engaging, revealing. Thank you for sharing your experiences, insight with us. And to all the panel of speakers, the panelists, thank you very much. Miria, Yosola, Abiba, Olumide, Vivian, and to the key facilitator from Tanwi to Onome to Rafiat to Kenny, thank you so much. It's been very, very insightful, very educative, and very engaging. Some of the discussion points resonate with already what we are doing in TGI, especially with our WIT program. Also what we are doing with our corporate strategy, and some of the insight that you provided also will help us in tweaking our people agenda in the coming months. Thank you so much for coming. It's really, really educative, engaging, and we think this is you did a very good job and justice to the topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to our group HR director, and thank you everybody. And I was going to ignore it, but I'm going to take the bait and just say something about the debate-ish going on in the chat. And I feel, it's been healthy so far, and that's really good. There's a difference, obviously, between equity, equality, and that is what inclusiveness really is, where we're talking about taking into cognizance everybody's differences and factoring that into decisions about their growth and development in the workplace. So my name is Rafiat Gawat, and Kende Alo was number 2. It's a women's event, please. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for your time. We really hope you took something away from this. Thank you, and then do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.